Nate Erskine-Smith, a liberal MP, has gone viral over the last few days because he's been criticizing Mark Carney's budget. And the interesting thing is he's on Mark Carney's side. He's on the same team, but he's been very critical of the budget. He made this video. A lot of people have pointed this out, how the media has been, they say so much about Polyev if members of his own side criticize him, but they've been relatively silent about this. But I want to jump into what Nate Erskine-Smith is actually saying. And this is more unbelievable than the fact that he's criticizing it. So let's listen to him. Now, he's already said what he likes about the budget, but remember, this is Mark Carney's own side. Now we're getting into the bad and ugly of the budget. So let's listen to Nate here.
The bad, or more fairly, where expectations were set at a level that we failed to meet, including on the question of generational investments. First, stalled climate action. I don't want to be too dismissive here, as the Canadian Climate Institute rightly highlighted the importance of a strengthened industrial carbon price. But apart from that promise, there was nothing new. Yes, we are moving forward with strong methane rules and clean investment tax credits, and these are key pieces. But we are also cutting tree planting, moving away from an emissions cap, winding down greener homes, and the budget offers no new money for climate action. On housing, we've got the beginnings of Build Canada Homes, a tax cut for new home buyers, and some dollars for housing-enabling infrastructure that are important but unfortunately very unlikely to move the needle on development charges.
Just quickly, we're spending $150,000 per minute more than we're taking in tax revenue. That's how bad the deficit is. So the fact that they're cutting things like tree planting or not doing new money for climate stuff, I mean, where would the money come from? I think we've spent enough. It's 150,000 bucks a minute extra. So something to think about.
To a degree we would like. It falls short of these specific promises in our platform, and it unfortunately falls well short of the wartime effort that many of us thought we'd deliver. Now, the fiscal frame of spend less to invest more is actually one that I like. Operational books generally in balance, and a capital deficit spending more easily justified. But the budget adds $140 billion in new spending over 5 years, $90 billion net after savings, and only 36% of the net new spending is capital. Related, there is a lot of deficit financing here to cover non-capital new spending. Yes, honoring our initial 2% commitment to NATO made sense, and a middle-class tax cut was a platform promise. But these are far and away the two largest financial commitments. They are non-capital, and they should be paid for. My kids shouldn't pay for today's military or for me to save $400 of income taxes.
Oh, man. Okay. He says his kids should not spend for their future taxes should not pay for the military or for his $400 tax cut. Well, anybody could say that about anything, right? Like, oh, my kid shouldn't pay for, just pick something that I don't like in the budget. But the idea, let's start with the tax cut thing for a second, which is just the most bizarre. So he's saying he gets a $400 tax cut and his kids shouldn't pay for that. Okay. That means he gets an extra $400. So he could either give it to his kids now, invest, buy them extra, whatever they need now, put it into their school, like their university fund, or just save it, invest it, and give it to them later in an inheritance. So the fact that you have more money now does not affect your kids unless you're thinking of, like, what are you going to do with it? Just buy yourself, like, take your wife out to a fancy meal and then not give your kids anything. So any tax cut basically by definition is bad because people get the tax cut and then future generations would have to quote unquote pay for the tax cut. The idea is the more you cut taxes, the more you open up the economy, create, like, people have more money, they can spend more. There's more incentive to build a business because you have wealthier people. But I don't know, the idea that he's worried about his kids or any kids paying for any tax cut is just so weird because it's the cash you're getting that you can use for your family or invest it for them or give it to them, right? It's just, that would be better. I would love if my parents got a tax cut, invested it, which they do, and then I would get it later. Like, that's amazing, right? And that's what I do for my son. So unbelievable. And then the defense, I mean, if you have a military and you have to increase funding for it, well, uh, yeah, everybody, I guess, has to pay for that, including kids in the future. Now, I would rather not have a budget deficit of $150,000 a minute. I would cut a lot of things so that we don't. I'd rather have a surplus. I think it is possible to work towards that. Absolutely, but we have to cut a lot of garbage. But you can't use the old, let's invest more for, he wants to invest more for climate stuff. Well, I don't want my kids paying for that in the future. Okay. But anyway, like, make the economy better. Okay. Make the economy better so that we have more money, that we can pay down the debt. We don't have to worry. And then you'd want to have more tax cuts, better opportunities, this kind of thing. Not let's spend it more on like left wing things, keeping the oil and everything in the ground, and then worrying about it's just unbelievable. But anyway, let's see what else he says.
And much needed OAS reform, the largest non capital growing expenditure.
Oh, sorry. Last thing, I remember I saw a video on him. I might make a whole thing later, but he wants to change old age security because he doesn't like, and a lot of people say this, how wealthier old people get money and the other ones don't, and they want to change, or like everybody gets almost the same amount. It's a high clawback rate. The only thing I'll point out is I understand that in theory, but we have so many incentives now for, or like so many safety net things for old people that don't have any money. You get a guaranteed income supplement. So if you screwed up your whole life, you made no money, you saved no money, you have no income, you get a guaranteed amount of, I think for a couple, it's like $2,500 or something per month for the rest of your life. There's just a lot of money that comes into people even if they mess up, and it creates a magnet. Like, think about, people can invite their parents and grandparents over, and we still have that. And if they don't earn any money, they get this guaranteed income supplement. So what you want to do is have a system that rewards hard work and really encourages people to save. I don't want old people or anybody struggling, suffering because they don't have any money. But at the same time, I want to create an incentive so that when people are young, they are somewhat, they realize they have to work and they have to save. They just have to, because if you look out at the society at large and you coddle every group that sort of fails, like drug addicts or just different people that fail, you get so many more of them because there's like the disincentives for doing it aren't that bad. So no, I don't want to see people on the street or struggling, but at the same time, uh, I like the idea that if you work hard, you save money, um, you're better off than people who don't, so that more people do that. And I know that it does make a big difference.
It still isn't part of our political conversation. Now, the ugly. And there isn't a lot that falls in this category, thankfully. First, we see the budget commit to a new inefficient fossil fuel subsidy for LNG facilities. Look, if there's a business case for LNG, there is a business case. We do not need more public dollars chasing fossil fuels. Worse, we see major cuts of over 200.
Oh, all right. Like, he's probably a nice guy as a person. I don't mind the guy. I don't mean to sound disgusted of him as a person, but we don't need more fossil fuel subsidies. Now, if I was like a really young person and naive and just listening to the way people talk about that, I would agree, right? It sounds like, well, oil and gas, they make a lot of money. Why give them a subsidy ever, right? Shouldn't they just pay for it themselves? But the reality is, the government gets a lot of money in revenues from these oil and gas companies, and they do. It costs a lot to set up whatever new project that they're doing, and they want guarantees. They want to almost, if you want to call it bribery, I guess it is an incentive, because imagine if you're a multinational company, you're going to go somewhere wherever you get more money, right? So you could do it in the US, you could do it in the Middle East, you could, set up something in Canada. So they want some sort of a tax break or subsidy or whatever to get going. and you can blow it. You want to make sure that you set this up properly, but you have to play ball, and you want to make sure that big projects are getting invested in. Like, give them as little as possible, but you want to make sure you've got enough projects going so that it creates jobs, and then it creates just a ton of revenue from them paying. All those workers have to pay tax, and then they have more money to spend in the local economy, and businesses can open restaurants, whatever else. But the idea of just like, well, if there's a business case for it, it'll happen. Like, that's just not true. Um, if you do subsidies properly, which they don't always do, but if you do them properly, you can really encourage more investment, and then you make so much more back in tax revenues.
Worse, we see major cuts of over $2.5 billion over 4 years to international development assistance. Real Keir Starmer energy that unfortunately caters to a prevailing, albeit short-sighted current view among wealthy donor countries. A Pearsonian budget this is not. Now, I know these are not easy times, and a budget process involves tough choices. Of course it does. It's also only a first budget. It can't be expected to solve all problems. And the devil will be in the details of implementation in many cases, as it always.
I don't know. That's enough of this part for now. But like, I could say, why would I want my kids to pay for sending, I don't know, a bunch of money to other countries? Now, I've never been a huge like cut foreign aid type of person. But if you really look into the details, so much of that money is wasted. Like, I don't mind sending some tax dollars. Again, we're $150,000 per minute over budget, so it's not like we really have the money. But I don't mind some going towards helping people if most of that money actually helps the people in the right causes, instead of just turns into a huge boondoggle. So anyway, those are my thoughts on his critiques. I wish the budget was a much smaller deficit. I wish we were leaner, but I'd go in the opposite direction of how he's criticizing the budget. But anyway, I'm coming from the other side of this. But love to hear your thoughts. As always, I always get back to them. So we'll see you in the next one.